Hello, hello. Ron Callis here with another episode of Automation Unplugged. Today is Wednesday, October 7th, 2020. 2020, that is the year. Quarantine's making us all a little crazy. And what time is it? It's 12:30, just a little bit after 12:30. So let me go ahead and jump over to Facebook and let me verify if we are coming through loud and clear. So stand by while I check on that. And it does appear we are coming through. Awesome. If you are out there watching us live, hey Chris, appreciate the comment. Let's see if my software is going to cooperate today. Yay! There you are. So Chris says, "Hey Ron." Hey Chris. Appreciate you joining us. If you're out there, drop into the comments. Let me know where you're coming to us from. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump right into things. So let me go ahead and tell you what we're going to do here. Today, I'm honored to have the one and only Michael Cogbill here for show 139. I actually had known of Michael because I'm here in South Florida. I had known of Michael as the head of engineering at an integration firm called ETC, and my interactions with him were brief and not very often. But I heard his name, and as I've been watching now, Michael over the years and just getting to know him more. Michael's actually one of the founders of our industry, and he was there in the 80s at the beginning. He was actually in the 70s in the aerospace industry, and then in the 80s he found this industry. And we're gonna go on the way back machine and talk about things back in the beginning, all the way to the present. And today he's still doing design consulting for high net worth customers around North America. And I do see I got a few more hellos. I've got a hello from Mario. What's up, buddy? Thanks for joining. And Eddie Shapiro. Thanks, Eddie. And Eddie is running for the board. So if you're out there and you are an integrator, then you should be voting and potentially voting for Eddie. So Eddie, thanks for hanging out. Let's go ahead and bring in Michael and let's get this show started. Michael, how are you, sir?
I am good. I am really good.
You look good. Your camera looks great. Your
Thanks.
your camera is crystal clear.
Yeah.
It looks better than mine. I'm here on my Mac. What do you call iMac Pro? But I can't get any other third party cameras to work and not break my computer, and so I'm using the native camera. But yours looks great.
Thanks.
Michael, where are you coming to us from?
I am in the Palm Beach area, actually, specifically North Palm Beach.
Are you from North Palm Beach, or how
Oh
long have you
gosh,
been in
no,
Florida?
no.
I bet in the
I lived
cowboy
there.
hat, maybe you're from somewhere other than Florida.
You think, and with the accent, you think maybe, just maybe.
Just maybe.
Um, I grew up in Arkansas, Texas. I was in that area when I grew up. So um, people always ask me, say, "Well, did you always wear a cowboy hat?" And well, kinda, but we really started kicking in when I lost my hair. I mean, when you lose the hair, nothing's worse than a sunburn on that head. And so, you got a choice. You're going to put cover on. What is it going to be? Well, it was a natural for me to go with the cowboy hat. So it's kind of been my ID, if you will, everywhere I go. And I've been to some pretty fancy places with a cowboy hat on. So.
Well, I can always count on in any industry event when I look across the sea of people. If I see the cowboy hat, I know it's you. So it's certainly part of your identity these days. Now, for those that may not know you, Michael, you are currently running a consultancy. So maybe let's just talk about that real quickly here. You left ETC. I think you told me offline you were planning to retire. and you left ETC at the beginning of the year, but it looks like you've spun up your consultancy. So can you tell us what that business is? And then I actually want to go back and kind of talk about your beginnings in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I always saw this niche, but originally it was like, I'll just do a few jobs here and there, and I'll do that, and it's kind of working that way. I'm kind of able to pick and choose now, but realistically, the niche is this. If you guys work with your mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers that design the electrical systems and the HVAC systems and stuff like that, well, the missing element really has been that independent, unbiased, low voltage designer. You see it in commercial a lot, the technology section of commercial specifications, but you don't really see it in our industry. And I felt there was a big need, and I talked a little bit to some builders and some old homeowners that still call me, just say, well, can you tell me what I should do? And it's that guide through that maze of technology. And I'm not selling product. I'm not installing the product. I'm actually just trying to show you, okay, this is what I think, given what you've told me, this is what I think you need. And also, I think what I do that's maybe a little unique, and that I think I really have a skill set at, is I'm able to take something that's really, really complicated and translate that into something that application oriented or meaningful, and why that's important to you, homeowner, to know, and communicate that to them. They don't care about the wiring in the wall and stuff like that, but it's the result of that. So, really what I'm doing is that I just finished a project. I said finished. I'm still working on the project, but the initial output that went out to bidders was a full set of drawings, CAD drawings, showing all device locations, showing wiring tables, all that stuff. And then I wrote a 30-page specification that literally told them, basically, these are the things I want it programmed to do. This is the equipment that I recommend. You need to supply that or equivalent. So it gave an extremely tight specification. And for the builder, he was saying, wow, this is really great, because now I can get an apples to apples bid. The spec's tight. I can get a real bid now, that I don't have to, try to say, well, this guy's, he's this much higher than this guy. Why is that? And is it really that much difference? So and I said, yeah, and I can look at that and find out if they've missed anything or whatever. And he said, oh, well, certainly, obviously. So, and then I've got inspection stuff that I do later into the projects too. So
in that model, Mike, does the builder hire you, or is it the homeowner that's hiring you?
In this case, that particular job, it was a homeowner. In another case, it's actually been the builder, because the homeowner wanted that contract under them. It's just a matter of where they place. But at the end of the day, I'm really serving that homeowner to make sure they get what they want and what's important to them. So,
how common are you seeing this role of this system designer, specifier, really this customer advocate? You're playing a customer advocate role in this capacity, really looking out for their best interest to design or create the specification that meets their needs. And you're helping them navigate this set of unknowns as to, how do I go from this lifestyle I want, or this experience I want in my home? How do I go from that want or need to having a system that I love and that I'm happy I hired the right contractor or the right, home technology professional?
Well,
how often is this done?
Well, it's like, how many times do you use lighting designers? I mean, it's the bigger jobs. It's the jobs where, not every job has the engineering firms come on there, the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers. But where you have the larger jobs, where there's a need for those level of consultancy, you've got professionals in interior design, you've got the architects, you've got that cadre of players, which is a place that a lot of us play in the higher end market, there's a place for that, and it's been missing because what you have is a dealer, and nothing bad about this, but they've had to fill the gap of design because no other party in that line knew what to do. They didn't have the knowledge, and they really didn't have the knowledge to evaluate A versus B. So sending out to bid was almost a futile effort. So what I found was that even though our guys in this industry typically do design build, that the idea of having somebody come in as an independent designer, independent evaluator, an independent guide on this thing with some real experience that understood the installation process, understood the dealer's needs, understood what was going on there. So I'm really a good advocate for the dealer if he's delivering what he's supposed to deliver. It's not an adversarial situation, but at the end of the day, I've got to make sure the owner's getting what he wants. Now, my process is I start with something called a little system information guide, and I go through each subsystem asking very practical questions like, are you interested in having surveillance cameras? Do you want to cover every inch of the property, or do you want to do selected areas? Here's a list, kind of give me an idea. What do you think you want to see with these cameras? What are you looking to see? You want to watch the kids in the pool? Are you looking for intruders? Are you what? So I'm trying to get an idea how high security, what level that the customer wants. And I'll take each subsystem and go through that with them to help them understand. So it's educational as well as it's informative for me. I'm not so interested that they get everything filled out and the answers are perfect, because I'm going to figure out real quick what they have the most interest in. If the most interest is in, I got to have my music, then I'll know that. And I'll be able to interpret that. We need to do a little higher grade in audio here. We need to make sure we do that. If they're video people, we need to know that. If they're not, I need to know that too. So the idea is to get a good evaluation. That's where I start. And then I'll have an initial set of drawings I'll do, because people are better editors than they are. I'll do what I think that means. I'll put that on paper.
It's easier for them to edit than to have to create from scratch.
Yeah. I mean, look, if I ask you, what do you want? People say, I don't know. What do I need?
I have that happen to me all the time with marketing plans.
Oh, gosh.
And if I were to ask them, what do they want me to do? They're going to I don't even know how to answer that question.
Yeah. Here's what I would do in this room based on what I understood that was important to you. And I'll get the editing. I'll jump right in. So I'll take that, and then from that, I'll build a specification, and then we'll go forward from there. But, it's been good. It's been good. I'm finding a nice little niche.
And that business, it Rev 2 Consulting. So
that is Rev 2 Consulting. People say, why do you call it Rev 2? And I said, well, this is my second revision of my automation life, I guess,
I love it. Well, let's go back, if you don't mind. Let's go back when you began. How did you land as I want to say you were an electrical engineer,
right?
And you were working in the aerospace industry. So you started in that space in the 70s?
Yeah,
is that right? Something like that. That would be right at the end of the Apollo program, right? Apollo program ended in the 70s.
Yeah. I remember when I graduated, there were 2 4.0 students, and we had all been interviewed. I must have interviewed 30 companies, and we were all interviewing, but nobody was hiring. It was 1975, and it was like 74, 75. There was nobody hiring. We were like, whew. I had 2 offers, and I'm standing there looking at 2 guys with 4.0 and said, screw it, we're going to graduate school because we got no offers. Now, they were a little on the nerdy side, and maybe I was a little more on the sales side. I grew up, my dad was a General Motors GMC truck and Buick car dealer in a little small town in Arkansas. So I grew up around a salesman.
So
So
some of those
anyway,
skills rubbed off.
yeah, I think there was a few did. He taught me some cool stuff. But anyway, so I went to work at Rockwell International. Uh, yeah, man, it was terrific. The defense aerospace industry, it was exciting. Um, I was doing some exciting work. Um, yeah, there are 100 war stories I tell you, but I don't want to drag us down into that one. But the idea is that I had worked with the Rockwells, the Magnavox Research Labs out in California. I did some work at the Marshall Space Flight Center at NASA in Huntsville, Alabama. I spent time over at the Rocket Laboratory on the Redstone Arsenal, where Warner von Braun had done all the rocket work. So I can claim to be a rocket scientist. I had worked on the shuttle. I was working on the separation bolts, that the firing system that fires the explosion. And we always used to laugh about the separation bolts, because you want that explosion to break them apart at a specific point. But you don't want them to break when you don't want them to break, but you do want them to break when you do want them to break.
That sounds like a
So,
terrifying
so
piece to be
so,
working
so the
on.
question was, how do you spec that? And how do you so it was a lot of work there on how you did that and how you made sure that you had that crossover specification. And again, it's not like you can pre-test them. I mean, it's a propellant that explodes. It's an explosion. So I could test my firing system, but you couldn't really test those unless you were not on things. So there's no pre-test taken off. You just hope they worked.
Holy
So
moly! This is the bolt. So when the space shuttle was going, when the boosters have been spent, when they fall off, is it the
yep,
bolts that hold those on?
yep, yep. There's a separation bolt. It all come out of the same technology they use for ejection seats in airplanes. How they break those loose and then fire the retro rockets, all that stuff. The sequencing and all that stuff. It has to happen on that stuff. So.
So you were exposed
Anyway,
to high levels of technology, and
yeah,
wh-
it was. I worked with some of the guys that back at Magnavox Research Lab were big communications guys, and they had done work with the radio system that Gary Powers had when he flew over Russia in the U-2 back in the 60s. And I mean, these were guys. It was like the guys at the Rocket Laboratory where Warner von Braun, they were kids when they went to work there. And they tell me all these wild stories about Warner von Braun and sleeping in his lab and all that stuff. But anyway, so I did that, and finally got to a point where I was literally running liaison between the Capitol building and the Pentagon, working big contracts, stuff like that. And I just got burned out. I was traveling too much. I just, and you found out how our government works. If you know today, our dissatisfaction with the Congress and the government. Well, I was starting to see the early signs of that back then, and I was so infused with getting reelected. That's really what it was about. So I left that, kind of just said, I'm done, left the industry. Didn't know what I wanted to do. But I remember one Sunday morning, I sat straight up in bed because I remembered a little article I'd cut out of an airplane on an airplane one day that said this new magazine called Electronic House. And I stuffed it in a file, and I got up. It was like 7 o'clock in the morning, ran in there, found that little thing. And all it said was my new magazine, Electronic House. And that was interesting, talking about the new intelligent home. Don't know where to get it. Don't know where to go. There's no internet. Can't go search. None of this, right? So I'm the first guy at the Dallas Public Library that day. I go to see the librarian. I said, you got to give me the information. She gives me the name of this guy named Roger Dooley. And Roger was the publisher of the magazine. Monday morning, 8 o'clock, I call Roger. Hey, Roger, I'm really excited about your magazine. He said, yeah. I said, I want you to send me every single issue you got. He said, no problem, Mike. I'll send you all 3. I'm serious. I said, oh, I thought I was late to the industry. I was saying, oh my God, I got to catch up. This is going to get out ahead of me. I'm not going to be able to, little did I know. Well, within 5 or 6 months, I was doing I was involved with CE bus committee meetings and all this stuff, which was the early standards committees. That led to doing some work in locally around town. I found some people that wanted to do houses. I was working with Tricia Parks, writing articles, and I wrote this thing
CEDIA
on
as a
low.
trade organization did not exist yet.
No,
Is that
no.
accurate?
I remember it was like, this was like 87, 88. So, there was really no trade organization. I had met a few other guys that did some similar things, but that was just through, just getting around and getting my name out there a little bit. And so anyway, I ended up starting a company called IntelliHome, the Intelligent Home, because I was getting requests to help people with their houses. And one of them, interestingly, had been my first boss's boss, if you will, at Rockwell International, and he was a retired president of Rockwell International. I was like, holy crap! I knew who Kent Black was, and it was great. I got in, and he, it was like two engineers working on something, going to it. And I remember I had him in my office, and I was showing him this touch screen that was not color at the time. It was electroluminescent. I had this touch screen from AMX, and I was showing him this thing, and I had this button on it. His wife was sitting there, and boy, we're talking all this techie stuff. And she throws her hand down as a gauntlet between us and says, hold it, hold it. I got a question, guys. Why, if I touch that and I want to wipe that screen clean, my house is going to go wild. I went, well, Karen, I never really thought about that, but okay. And I created the clean screen button right then and there for Karen and said, this is your clean screen button. And it would pop, and she loved it. She showed everybody that ever came to her house. She showed her her personal button. Karen's clean screen button was the name of that button.
So you'd press the button and it would remove all the other actionable
buttons. It would go to a blank screen. It would freeze and say, please clean me. You got 5 minutes, and it would do it. So, just things like that you were learning early on. You had no idea, you didn't think about. But anyway, I remember he had invited myself and Tricia Parks to come talk to some of his senior executives from other divisions. And I said, okay, great, I'll come in and do that. And we were sitting at in the executive lunchroom, and we're sitting with these execs. And I remember sitting at this one table, and the guy says, when we invented the space shuttle, and I was like, oh my God, you talk about a power lunch? My head was just pounding. I said, man, this is a serious power lunch here. So anyway, stuff like that. That's how I kind of got started. And then it just grew from there. And I've been at it ever since.
That's so what did an integrated home in the late 80s, early 90s, like, what did that even mean? Like, if you had someone with unlimited money and they wanted technology, well, maybe they used to watch the cartoon The Jetsons from the 60s. Yeah. What would you do for them? Because I think we all know what we do today. Was it the same then, or what was?
Oh gosh, different? No. I mean, we were just pioneering everything. Everybody wanted to be able. They loved the touchscreen approach, and I could show that with. And I was using some of the AMX stuff that they were doing in the boardroom to integrate audio video stuff. Well, then we were saying, okay, well, get people saying, well, I want to be able to do my heating, cooling. And we had lighting systems out there like Light Touch and the early Vantage systems. We had those out there. And we had ways that actually had protocols we could write on RS-232 to communicate with them. But, they wanted security. They wanted HVAC. And it was like, there's no thermostats that I can really talk to. There's no network thermostats. And I ended up working with Jerry Tartolino to develop some of that. But in the early days, we would literally switch over from a thermostat and use relays and write our own algorithms so that we could do it from our own and sensors and do our own thermostat emulation, if you would. I mean, that's what we would have to do because there was nothing to talk to. Security systems, I remember there was a silent night system that you could talk through its printer port and get a little bit of information, but you couldn't really control anything. So I remember I was on this on the C-Bus committee with me was a guy named Steve Winnick, who was the vice president of technology at Demco. And I kept dogging that guy and saying, look, give me the protocol on the keypad bus. I just want to emulate your keypad. Give me that protocol. He wouldn't do it. He said it was security reasons. And I finally got him a little liquored up one night and said, come on, man, what's the deal here? He finally said, well, I'm kind of embarrassed by the protocol. So it's such bad technology. It's not really good. And I wouldn't really want to expose. I said, come on, I don't care. I just wanted to. I remember about 3 years ago, I got a call from one of my ex-employees who was still supporting Kent Black. And we had built that box that adapted from the Demco keypad bus into an RS-232. And he says, you won't believe it, but that damn thing's still working. And I said, well, I think I built 10 of those, and put those in. So those were the, and that's where I really started to say, this stuff is brute force. Nobody's sitting down at a Demco or Sony or anywhere else and saying, let's build these products so they can integrate. And to this day, they're still not totally doing that, but doors are opening up a little better. But so I see the whole integration process as brute force. That's what we do. That's most of what we do. We take things that weren't originally designed to go together to be able to provide people with that simple interface.
So speaking of brute force, I happen to know, because I know you, that you were called out to actually meet with Bill Gates.
Oh yeah.
Back on his early project, the first big house.
Yeah, the one up in Seattle. Yeah. The one that had the underground stuff and all that.
What was that like?
Oh, it was fascinating. I had gotten called in by one of the AV guys that was working on that. It was actually a guy named Michael Avery. That's been in our industry forever as well. And he said, Mike, come up here. You got to help me, man. I don't explain some of this stuff, So they put us in a room, and at the time they always hired these really smart kids out of Stanford and all these other places like that. And so I'm in a room full of smart kids, and they're droning on about it. They're going to do this, do that. And one of the things I remember is they were going to do a grid that was in the house, and you'd have this little tag that you'd put on. And as you walked around a house, it knew your location. And based on that location, they would then, at the time, we didn't have high definition, but they were starting to pop up in Japan. So they said, then we're going to have these high definition displays, and we're going to display art. In fact, Bill Gates at the time even created a separate company that went out and bought digital art so that they could have that. I mean, it was the first of its kind. He had a couple lawyers working on that, and they were buying. They'd even bought the digital rights to Mona Lisa. I remember that one specifically. So anyway, so they're talking about all this, and they said, yeah, then when they walk in the room, they're going to do this, and and all this, that. And I said, just understand something really practical here. What's going to happen when two people cross in the hall? How are you going to play my music and his music and their art and my art? Well, I'm sure we'll find a way to reconcile that. And then I said, and then what if you got a large group of people in a room? How are you going to play the music that they all like? What if Bill walks in the room? You're going to flip it over to his music? Well, how's that work? And I said, and you talking about the rate? You're going to, when you walk in the room, the temperature is going to go up, lights are going to come on. I said, how are you going to keep that temperature up to speed in 2 seconds? I said, it takes minutes to get that up to temperature. So they didn't have practical answers there. I mean, it got to the point they were talking to Boeing about there was this glass panel in the floor, and below the floor there was this room that they were going to have these robots that they were going to get from Boeing, and they were going to be able to take laser disc and VCR tapes and go plug them in different players throughout the whole place. And so where somebody wanted something, the robot go get it and plug it in. I just asked, I said, well, there's new media coming. What are you going to do about that? I guess we'll have to reprogram robots. And I said, it doesn't sound very practical to me. I said, you know, we don't know what that's going to look like or how it's going to work. You know, and they was like, you know, so it was a lot of little things like that that manifested itself. So
That is straight out of the Jetsons. That was a money is no object sort of
oh
technology first
yeah,
approach.
on site. I mean, we walked out on site. I remember Bill was standing out there and he was just chewing the architects up one side and down the other about budget and saying, "You guys don't understand anything." You know, he was going on about it. And he was in full force mode. And I'm standing there looking at that guy. I said, "Well, we just doubled his budget from what I told you this morning." I said, "What's he going to say about that?" He said, "I don't know." So we go over and we talk to him and explain the budget. Bill said, "Budget? I'm in the technology business. There is no damn budget."
Woo,
So
that was
I was
dodging a
like,
bullet.
"Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Happy days." So anyway, that was an experience and a half, I got to tell you. Yeah.
So, Mike, when in the early days, how did you decide what your business model was going to be? And I'm gonna compare that to anyone starting in the technology business today. Oftentimes, the people that start businesses worked for an integrator, and they're the programmer, the salesperson, or whoever, and they decide that they can do it better or they want to do it on their own. But there's a paradigm, there's a definition of how to run this type of business, how to scale it, where the thresholds or the ceilings for scaling it are. How did you figure it out when there was no one to look at? Or was there? Did you look at a different industry, or how did you approach it?
Well, you know, that's a great question because I was not probably the smartest businessman type. I was an engineer's engineer, you know, and I thought, okay, you know, I start this thing out and I said, okay, so how do I model this? I said, you know, first thing I got to do is write a contract so somebody can pay me. I do know that much. So I went and hired a lawyer and said, well, you know, I need blah, blah, blah contract. You need a lawyer, right? I hired this business lawyer and I spent 30, 40 minutes with him explaining what I do and all that stuff. And what he came back with was atrocious. It was atrocious. It had nothing to do with anything I was selling or delivering or anything. And so I had at that point to sit down and write a contract. And the nearest thing I could find a model was the AIA documents with some little reference. But you know, you got to realize there was really no references back then. There was no CEDIA. There was nobody I could go ask. There was no similar firm. You know, that was it. How do you do this business? So we were creating our own processes, making mistakes every which way. But you know, we started creating checklists. We started figuring out, you know, we got to get repetitive stuff. Got to be able to do things over and over. And so we took some models. At that time, I was more modeled after a design firm, and then developed into more of because a lot of work I was doing in the beginning was out of town. And so what I would do is I'd fly into town, find the best dealers there. I'd call all the manufacturers that I knew and say, who's your best guy in town? And I'd find a security guy, I'd find an AV guy, you know, and we'd go from there. And I was providing programming services and stuff like that. So it kind of just built from there. And then, you know, by natural osmosis, you start hiring installers and you're actually installing this stuff and putting it in. And it just, you know, it grew from that. And then by the early 90s, I was starting to meet other people that did what we did. So I could say, well, what do you do here? I mean, how do you do this? And, you know, so the CEDIA was the best thing that ever happened. I'll be honest with you, for all of us out there, because we were just grasping for knowledge in different areas. You know, I was an integrator. I was not the best AV guy in the deal. So when CEDIA started, I was their SI guy, their system integration guy. I was more in that vein than the guys who were coming in it from the AV world. So
in the early 2000s or the mid 2000s, I want to say, if I read it here, I think around 06, 05, 06, 07, somewhere in there, you joined ETC. You joined up with Bill Marinette to run engineering at ETC. And for those that aren't aware, ETC in Florida is one of the largest, if not the largest, certainly at the time, one of the largest residential integration firms in the state, one of the largest in the country. and you were running engineering. Can you kind of speak to some of the philosophies that you applied to that business that led to you being able to kind of put your stamp on the business, and what ultimately led to you guys running an effective integration firm from a scoping and engineering standpoint?
You know, Bill and I had known each other for years. And I had originally in my company in Telehome, we did develop some software, and it was patented. You can look it up under the name Intellihome, Intelihome, and you'll see my name there. But we patented some software, and he had some people we were showing it to. And so I met him in the early 90s at a few conferences. I remember we were in one Kinko's one night making copies for a class the next day, both of us madly making them the night before. And so I met him there, met his wife and all that. We got to know each other, and we stayed in contact. So in 2006, he called me. I was out in San Diego. I'd been doing some work with some lighting designers and some integration, and was working on a marina in America's Harbor, the new marina that was there, doing a leads-based system. So anyway, we were doing a lot of stuff out there. He called me and said, "Hey, how would you like to come to Florida? We're just going crazy here." And I said, "Well, I don't know. You know." Finally, I looked at my wife at the time. I said, "You want to go to Florida?" And she said, "Yeah, I think so." I'm in San Diego, and she said,
San Diego's pretty nice.
That's what I kept telling Bill. San Diego's awful nice. Now, I don't know if I want to come to that hot, humid Florida and everything. But anyway, I got here, and I've loved it ever since. But when I first came in, to answer your original question, when I first came in, I remember just kind of, taking my time, kind of looking around. I knew some of the guys there from the time I'd come and visited Bill from before. And I remember the first thing I saw was his drawing system was atrocious. It was the worst I had. The drawings, they would take the architect's CAD if they could get it. They were taking and putting little scribbles over here and putting dots on there, doing stuff. I mean, and by this time I had, over the years I developed my own set of symbols, and I had symbols, I had all this stuff. And so the first thing, I literally took about 2 to 3 months re-engineering that whole drawing system and documentation system that they had. And I think that was fundamental to transitioning that to coming from a solid engineering based design. I would go out and, for example, I'd ask people, I said, "Well, okay, you're using these products. Why did you choose these products?" "I don't know. That's what we always use." I said, "Well, let's reevaluate that. Let's make sure we're using the right thing." So I would try to go through that. So I went through a product. And the other thing we did was we tried to tighten down the mix of products that we had. That to me is one of the key things you can do in any integration firm. Tighten it down. Don't be change products every time something new comes out, or try one-offs. Try to get some consistency, try to get some experience with that product. Change when necessary, not because it's the new thing. So that probably is the key to what I found was good. And then we put in some processes and procedures for the field. So we talked in terms of engineering deliverables and field deliverables. What do you have to do? How do you know you're done? What is a completion?
So the concept of checklists or procedures to define that the customer accepts the final product and you in fact are done.
And I used to preach this one thing that was I call it repeatability. And I said, and I remember I was in Italy, and I sent one of the techs a picture of a box of McDonald's French fries. And I says, "It's amazing. It tastes the same here as it does in Palm Beach. How is that possible?" And the point was process, procedure, and repeatability work. That works. And you've got to get that down. You got to be able to do things similarly every time. So
now I know ETC over the years has been awarded some spectacular projects and some super famous people. I won't mention any.
Yeah.
Any project that stands out for you that was kind of interesting to you, maybe challenged you, or you thought was particularly fun?
Oh man, that's a tough question. There's so many. Um,
Or maybe a feature of a particular project that
I,
was
I, rem-
particularly
I
fun.
remember, I remember, I remember one project where there was a microphone that was put. We wanted the lady wanted to be able to hear the ocean, and the house was set back too far from the ocean. Plus, she didn't want to leave her windows open because of the humidity and the temperature and stuff. So she said, "Well, can we just put a microphone down there and I can listen to the ocean as my music when I go at night?"
That's a pretty cool idea.
Hey, yeah, let's do that. I said, "Do you realize about every 6 months we're going to change that microphone? That salt's going to eat it up. I don't care what we do." And she says, "I understand, but it can't be that crazy." I said, "Okay." So we did. We put it down there. And one day there was this, you know, I'd never seen it in California, but I saw it here a couple of times. There was this dead still on the ocean, no waves, no noise, really a dead still out there. Well, lo and behold, she got in there and turned it on. Couldn't hear anything. Couldn't hear the ocean. Middle of the afternoon, so she just cranked it up. So I guess it's broken again. I'd probably replace that microphone. So about that time, here comes both a motorboat coming flying down through there and one of those airplanes with the signs behind it, dragging behind it, kind of flew down right over the top of the beach. And it sounded like World War II. She jumped through the roof there. She was like calling me. She said, "I thought I was going to die. I thought I was being attacked." I swear, she said. And I said, "Oh my gosh." I said, "I never thought anything." She said, "Well, that's what happened." And I said, Finally, we figured it out. So we went down there. We had to put noise limiters and all kinds of, the whole limiter on it so it wouldn't do that again. But
Oh,
that's,
that's funny.
that's how you learn. That's how you learn.
Yeah, bit by how could you have pre-planned for that or pre-thought that out? That's pretty cool. You and I'm mindful of time, and I still have a lot I want to go through with you. You
Yeah.
are a member of the CEDIA board of directors. So first of all, thank you for your service and dedication to the industry and the time that you donate to do that. So thank you for that. And what are some of the initiatives that are going on in CEDIA that people listening or watching should know about or care about?
Well, I have a deep love for CEDIA. Let me just say that, and it goes back to the early days. We had the early meetings, the original Amelia Island thing. I remember sitting there with the vice president of Panasonic Technologies, and one of the guys from AMX was up there talking about RS-232, and this guy was saying, "What's RS-232?" Judd Hoffman punched me and said, "Michael, we got a long ways to go with this bunch." So it was interesting in the early days, but and they had always asked me to get on the board in the early days and serve. And I said, look, I go and I teach 2 or 3 courses at every CEDIA. I'm there when you need me. I've supported you on lots of AV stuff that you needed for the shows, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to stay with my business. So moving on to today, I looked up and it was, I don't know, 2018 or whatever. And I said, "You know what? I'm going to run. Maybe somebody will remember me, but we'll see." And sure enough, I got elected, and I'm very thankful for that because it's been tremendous. Now, as far as where I see CEDIA, I think is still a real key in our industry. It's a place you can go. It's a place you can find your peers. It's a place that you can get involved. And if I could preach one thing, don't just sit there and say, "What does CEDIA do for me?" Get involved. Get just the people alone you're going to meet. I can call anybody all over the country with all kinds of questions. I pick up a phone, call a guy like Anthony Gramani and say, "Hey, Anthony, where would you get something like this? Or have you run across this?" Those are the kind of relationships that you just need, you want. The main thing I'm seeing with CEDIA right now is we're doing some exciting stuff with education. It's growing, it's evolving. You got a taste of it when we were with the free stuff that came out. Uh, the whole concept here is to create a career path. Take a young guy comes into this industry. Let's take that young guy and let's say I'm the owner of the company. I can say, all right, now I want you to take these 5 courses. They're about, learning how to do rough. There's the details, there's stuff like that. Or I can take a more advanced technician. I want you to take these courses and this between now and your next review. Okay. And we can assign, as an owner, you can assign value and money to that. And we can put people on a career path. We can create competition between employees. We can show progress. We can actually do it because I've tried to do that internally, do training internally. I did it with ETC. I was constantly trying to do that. But boy, it's time consuming. And then to figure out the different paths and the different levels and the certifications and all that stuff is very difficult. CEDIA is putting a big emphasis on certification, standardization. They're now accredited ANSI standard vendor. That was a big, big deal to become ANSI accredited. That's the American National Standards Institute. We're accredited to provide standards, just as CEA is, IEEE, Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, and other organizations that are a member of the ANSI process. So that was a big deal. So if you put that together, we're really focused on trying to make sure that people have a place where they can learn and grow. The second area I think is very important as we go forward as technology is evolving. Okay, we're going to be in fights, I'm telling you, over lighting fixtures with these electricians because we're now getting in the lighting business because control's moving into the fixture. So what do? We're going to have to protect our space. That means legislative. We've got CEDIA out there going to all these, looking at every law that's being passed in every state, looking at licensing, looking at all these things to make sure that CEDIA's voice is heard. In fact, one of the things I'm doing right now is I'm on one of the code making panels for the National Electrical Code for the National NFBA.
Has CEDIA ever had a representative in
no,
the NEC decision-making process?
No, the seat became available and we jumped on it. And it's right in that area of the low voltage stuff, where PoE wiring, all that stuff. We want to make sure that that's available to do for us and that it makes sense and is properly specified. It's been interesting because there's been a lot of electrical people that were on that code panel, and I'm coming at from a low voltage standpoint. And, we're talking a lot about what's happening with data over coax, those kind of things like that. What happens with PoE, at 57 volts or whatever, is that high, too high voltage? And so we're getting those things in there, getting the wiring classes in there. So that's been a I think a big element for us to play in. So I'm excited for the future of CEDIA. CEDIA is been I think they were prescient in selling the show, obviously. So that was very helpful. We were able to build a whole new headquarters. We've got one floor fully leased, and we've got a situation where we have the resources and staff to move forward with these education opportunities. Well, I tell you, one of these things, what you'll look at is some of these courses that are being put together. I think what the really creative thing some of the staff has done is they said, well, look, let's modularize this so that if I had somebody like a Comcast or an AT&T or somebody come to me and say, hey, I need a course and training on this on network, they can take this piece, this piece, this piece, and put it together. So one class might be made up of 10 separate modules. And each one of those modules might be 10 or 15 minutes long that you could go take that course and learn that little segment while you're having lunch on your job, So that, and then sort of the final element is we're really looking at how do we make certification something that provides real value. Now, I've never said that I'm going to have a homeowner come in and say to me, hey, is this guy certified with CEDIA? That's not going to happen, I don't think, in my near future.
You'd have to
But
spend
what
a
I
lot
do
of
think,
money on customer awareness for that to be possible.
yeah, I mean, but what I do think is important is if the content's good, the information's good, there's value in it for owners and people you hire, and being able to carry that little certification to your next job and say, hey, look here, I'm CEDIA certified, and it has value and it means something. And so that's what we're concentrating on. And there's a whole element working on that certification right now to revise and revamp that. So
If
CEDIA is
you
an
were to
exciting place.
if you were to look into your crystal ball for next year, 2021, and for those listening, this is October 7th, 2020. So if you're looking at the crystal ball for next year, do you think our industry starts to have in-person events? I mean, I know there's all the buying group events in the spring slated. There's CEDIA slated. Well, Infocom, ISE slated for June. CEDIA slated for September. Any feelings on? I know there's hopes and prayers, but any sort of feelings you're able to express?
I do think that by, let's say, June or July, we'll have had enough distribution of a vaccine that will be out there. There will be ways that you can certify if somebody's vaccinated and they're safe. I'm thinking by mid next year, we're going to be back on track. But I think we're going to live in a very different world because this has changed us all. I truly, truly do. And I think we've accelerated the digital transformation enormously in the last just
6 months.
10 months, 10 months that we've been doing this. I never did that much on video and, work in place and, and conferencing. And it's pretty amazing what we've seen happen. I think going forward, there's a great future out there for integrators. I do. I see things that are going to move beyond the house. And I think that's some exciting areas to discuss.
Well, let's talk about technology using that same crystal ball. What are some of those areas that have you excited? And I'm just going to make an assumption that I know you're like a super engineer looking into the future, trying to predict what's coming. And then you also have your ear to the tracks because of your CEDIA ties. So what do you think's coming down the pipe that's going to affect the life of the integrator and the consumer?
Well, I do look at that. I'm a consummate reader and follower of technology and what's happening and where it's going. So there's a lot of transformation. You start with what's transforming in our world, and let's take transportation for example. Mm-hmm. In 10 years, will you be driving? I don't know. Will we have? There's a thing out there right now. It's called transportation as a service. Like we talk software as a service, they're talking about transportation as a service. It's just something you get. So if you look at those transformative things, and then you look at what we have today with just outside the vehicle, how does the vehicle integrate with my house? I have Alexa in my truck right now. It's kind of cool.
So you give commands to your truck and it talks to your house, or it talks to the truck?
I can talk to my house through my truck. I can tell my house to unlock the front door. Okay. So it's those kind of things that are starting to come to pass that we'll see. Then start looking at the transformation of, if we see all this technology happening everywhere, what's going to happen when we talk about smart community? How do we bring that in and to become part of the smart community and integrate with that? So not only is the outside and everything inside my house, is that starting to flow naturally together? And I think if you look at those trends and see where that's going, it's happening. We're integrating more and more in government buildings. We're integrating more and more in the community. services that we have in the local facilities, and whether it's your local golf course or whether it's a country club or what it is, that's part of becoming a member of the smart community. So I think there's always these integration opportunities. Now, obviously the near term things that everybody's talking about right now is wellness. Wellness is hot. It is really important, and I'm getting a lot of interest and doing a lot of stuff with my clients on wellness. And so if you don't know about wellness, spend some time on some of the CEDIA podcasts and get that information. The other thing is lighting. Lighting is transforming. You're not going to have these big back of house dimming systems anymore, because the control is going to the fixture. You buy a fixture, it's going to have built-in control. So are we going to start putting in fixtures? There's a good chance we might. There's a good chance we might. Will it be retrofittable? Yeah, you can retrofit this stuff, because we're going to talk to this stuff wirelessly.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the Lutron Ketra stuff, like the lamps you screw in, those are actually smart lamps.
And then I think as an integrator, I would be thinking, if I'm looking forward, I would be thinking about what I would call destination spaces. We're doing on the technical advisory committee or council at CEDIA, we're putting together a paper on that called destination spaces. And you think about, I just saw a deal where a company called immersivegym.com. Look it up. It's really cool. They've got you surrounded with an environment, sitting on a treadmill or on a bike or whatever, and as you travel, you're moving through this environment.
Oh, that's cool.
I think these immersive situations. And have you ever seen some of these things or looked at? I don't know. You just watch some of these stage sets you're seeing with the 3D that they're doing on TV shows like
Mandalorian.
And it's amazing with the projection imaging and what they're able to do. And you've seen it on buildings.
Oh, the 3D mapping where they're shooting
mapping and all that stuff. It's great. Take and turn that inside in a home or something like that, and we try that. So,
yeah, I have not yet seen it, but I'm actually starting to get some companies follow me on social media, or I guess they're tracking me or something, regarding the 3D mapping and turning art into your home into 3D mapped art installations, and how that's going to be a thing.
Yeah, and if you think about spatial computing now, what is that? Spatial computing. Well, we're going to move into 3D space. We're not going to be tied to a phone or a laptop or 2D environment for our computer. We're going to have wearables. We're going to have goggles. We're going to have headsets. We're going to have all kinds of things that are going to be computing environments, and it's happening really fast. If you talk to Rich Green, he is on this hard, and there's some great books about it right now. But I can tell you that spatial computing is going to change how we interact with our automated world, and that's a very exciting area that you want to look at. I tell you, one of the reasons I look at a lot of this stuff is I'm an investor, so I'm looking for those companies.
You're looking for the companies to put your money in.
Yeah, I want to find the next Google or the next Amazon, but
Amen.
It's out there. Let me tell you, there's so much going on that it's exciting.
Michael, believe it or not, we've been here an hour, and I'm mindful of your time and your hard stop. And I wanted to, first of all, anyone watching or listening that wants to get directly in touch with you, what's your recommended method? Do you want them emailing you? Do you want them calling you or visiting a website?
I would prefer they just email me at Michael, Michael, at rev2consulting.com. And that's the number 2.
Rev2. I'm going to put it here on the screen crawler. See if I get it right. Rev2 Consulting. Tell me if I got that right.
You did. Perfect.
All right. Yeah. Can't do many things, but I can type on occasion with these 4 fingers. These are my mighty typing fingers. Awesome.
As usual, great job, Ron. This has been fabulous. I've loved every minute of it. And hang around. I got 100 more stories to tell you guys one day.
Yeah, well, we're gonna shoot a quick after show. That's a new thing for those watching here on video. If you're listening to the podcast, which the show is also available on podcasts, then we're also putting out after shows. So definitely go to your podcast software and find it, and you'll be able to listen to those stories. So I appreciate you staying on, Michael, and Mike. Thanks for coming on the show, man. It was a blast. I loved your stories. All righty, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. The one and only Michael Cogbill. This was show 139 of Automation Unplugged. And I was just mentioning there the podcast here. I'll put this up on the screen. All you have to do is go to I was talking to Mike before we went live, and he said he was on a Samsung phone and thus running Android. So there's a whole plethora of programs on your Android device and or on your Apple device that allows you to listen to podcasts. So just check out the words Automation Unplugged. You can find the show, subscribe. If you feel so compelled, leave a review. Let us know what you think. And as always, gang, thanks for joining me. Thanks for checking out the show. And if you want to learn more about One Firefly, just go to our website or give us a call. And on that note, I'll see you next week. Hope you all stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone.